Hi, I'm Pat Moriarty from our community and welcome to our top 10 tips on winning grants. Our first tip is making sure that you plan for grants becoming available. There's over $10 billion of grants available every year in Australia. So you want to make sure that you get your piece of that pie. And the first thing you're going to need to do is to tell me what it is exactly that you want funding for. So in the planning context, be clear about what it is that you need the funding for and be prepared to be able to articulate that very clearly. Our second tip is then going on from that, why do you actually need that money? And being able to support that with some evidence. So evidence can be a local newspaper article, it can be some ABS statistics, can be your own client numbers. So be prepared to have all of that stuff ready to go as part of your plan. The third tip that we've got is to make sure that when you're putting in your budget that there's some contributions coming from different parts of the funding. So that could be as simple as a sausage sizzle that you're doing at Bunnings that's going towards one step or stage of the overall project, trying to put some of your own funding in, but be clear about not asking the funder for 100% of what you actually need. Be contributing some of that yourself, whether it's in cash or in kind. Wherever possible these days, you should be trying to work in partnerships with other community organisations, service clubs, local community bank. So think about the different ways that you can get those partnerships happening, as simple as looking at who could possibly help you contribute that step or stage to deliver that project so it's not just you. Remember, there's a lot of things in grants these days that say priority will be given to organisations working in partnerships, so that actually means go out and be involved in partnerships. Tip number 5 is be realistic in terms of your timeframes. There's so many community organisations that try and deliver projects to meet the grant maker's time frame instead of actually looking at it and being conservative in the time frame and saying this is how much we can deliver within that 12-month time frame. If you say a building can be built in 6 months and it actually takes 12 months to deliver it, then 6 months into the project the grant maker's got every right to pull that funding, and half a building being built at that stage is not great for you guys. Tip number 6 is to try and make your project a lot more sustainable. And when we're talking about this these days, you'll see that question one way or another framed along the lines of how will this project be sustained beyond the life of this project? So think about the diversification that you've got that can go towards that. You've got your memberships, potentially donations, all the different types of bequests and legacies, all the events and fundraisers that you can do. So things that you can pull together that make you look as if you're a lot more sustainable than just relying on one grant. So do think about that sustainability argument. Tip number 7 is to make sure that once you've found something that you think fits the grant criteria, to be sure about it. And the simplest way you can do that is to read the guidelines and make sure that what's included is actually eligible for it. When up to 20 to 30% of grant applications arrive on grant makers' desks, they're ineligible. Now, I can't think of a bigger waste of time than putting in an application that you're not eligible for. So do read the guidelines. Tip number 8 is to make sure you do your homework on the grant makers. Most grant makers have delivered programs or projects previously, so look at what they've delivered, the average grant that they've delivered, not going too far over that. Making sure that you actually see the types of programs and projects and how much they've funded previously so that you can actually see what they've actually highlight as successful programs for them, because that's what you're trying to do, meet their criteria. Tip number 9 is to try and get all of this pulled together well in advance of the closing date so that you can actually proofread your own work. There's nothing worse than getting to the front page of your application and there's 6 or 7 typos there, there's things all over the place, grammar's in the wrong spot. That's the last thing you want to do to make a good impression on a grant maker. So get it in, try and get it in advance of the deadline, because 80 to 90% of grant applications arrive at the very last minute. 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon doesn't mean 4:59.59. Try and get it in a couple of days in advance and you might be able to get a second chance at maybe some of those edits. So the last tip that we've got, number 10, is be ready to go when you've got that funding. So don't say that you're ready to go and then take 3 to 4 months to get ready to actually start your project. Be smart about how you're going to be measured, because you're going to have to report on this stuff, and get it going as soon as you possibly can. So good luck with that, and let's hope that you win more grants.